So Jesmane, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you please share a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
Sure. I was born in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, though I moved to Johannesburg when I was only 2 years old. So Johannesburg has basically shaped me.
And tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
At a young age, I pictured myself in a power suit, although this is a bit lofty as today we've moved to business casual. And I always wanted to be a chartered accountant, even though I didn't know anyone from my community who had that qualification, and I wanted to work in business.
And can you tell us who inspired you in your early days?
I can't think of a specific person, but I feel that being raised in the marginalized community of Westbury in Johannesburg, at a young age going to school, I knew which houses sold drugs, and I knew that there was something wrong with this, and I felt that I could do better and be better than my surroundings told me. So that there was an incentive to move out of Westbury.
And tell us, Jesmane, you hold a master's in public administration from Harvard. You've been nominated a young global leader by the WEF, the World Economic Forum. You are serving on a number of boards, including Murray & Roberts, Spur, and other illustrious companies. Looking back over your career, would you say there was a turning point, or maybe a number of turning points?
It is probably a number of turning points. At first, qualifying as a chartered accountant, and then building my career in private equity and investments. Studying at Harvard was a turning point. That was my first time living outside the country, being exposed to world-class faculty, world-class classmates, and then that paved the way for me to live out abroad for a few more years.
And you've been heading, notably, you've been heading the Africa board for the World Economic Forum. Can you tell us a little bit more about your World Economic Forum experience?
Yes, so when I lived in Switzerland, I worked for the World Economic Forum as the head of business for Africa, and I wanted to develop my trajectory and business relationships across South Africa. So in that role, I met key business leaders across the continent. Definitely gave me a deeper understanding about how to do business on the continent.
And you've also written a book that we will touch upon a little bit later. So you're sharing your own leadership journey. So what would you say is driving you today?
The road from poverty to prosperity was a long, hard road, and my dream would be for more inclusion, less inequality, and more unity in the world. I see myself using my analytical leaning, which is my investments and finance background, combined with my more creative storytelling side, which came through in the book to achieve this.
Now, Jesmane, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
That is a deep question. There's so many changes to navigate in our world right now. We've got this global pandemic and its after effects, including widening inequality. And then there's revolutions changing productivity and how we live with artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and robotics. And I feel that we need leaders who can create and usher us into a shared and prosperous future, and that can take all of mankind along into this prosperous future.
And Jesmane, what have you learned from your own journey, your own leadership journey, that you would consider most important for building future leaders?
Well, with change and uncertainty, there's this natural part of fear that we experience. We need to overcome this fear and propel ourselves by upskilling and growth. For me, I've taken the initiative to read many books on machine learning and blockchain as I prepare myself for a more technological world. And I use this upskilling as chair of a fintech company, Cybrin, serving on the digital economy working group of BRICS, and I'm on the investment committee of a venture capital fund, E4E.
And when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they navigate social media to build their own leadership brand?
You can use social media to target your audience. So on the various platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, you can search for like-minded peers and make powerful connections. I'm interested in technology investing and have connected with many venture capital principals on social media. And then you can use it to build an engaging community. You know, we can find these like-minded people and share our thought leadership. And there's, you know, the new platform Clubhouse, where you can set up a room and lead a discussion. And I've shared many of my articles, opinion pieces, podcasts, interviews on various platforms that I'm on.
Now, you've just attended the first virtual Davos. You've been to many physical Davoses or in-person meetings before. How does a virtual experience compare to the previous in-person meetings?
Yeah, of course, there is this serendipity of chance encounters at Davos, which is part of the magic of in-person Davos, which you can't replicate virtually. But having said that, I enjoyed the virtual Davos, and I actually found that the experts on the panels were more relevant and targeted compared to the in-person meeting. I think when there's in-person meetings, there's so many people who you know, are interested in getting speaking roles, and here I felt the selection was very very targeted, which then made the content and the insight very relevant. And with the first virtual Davos, it's the first time that now sessions were open to anyone in the public, and I thought that was good, because Davos is criticized for being ivory towered and lacking of inclusion. So by opening up the panels to the public, I think is good. And there was a good balance between a portion of the session that anyone in the public could join, and the latter part of the sessions, which were more interactive for invite-only guests. So I think there was something in it for everyone.
So can you share what were the main themes, and what is it you would have liked to see more of, especially since you wrote a book about racial justice?
Yes, so the key themes were climate change, stakeholder capitalism, COVID and the economy, the fourth industrial revolution, and then racial equality. And aligned to the message of my book on racial equality, I wanted to see more of that in the agenda. The climate change agenda is very important, and that was very strong and dominant, but I wanted more balance with the racial equality content.
Right, and were there any trends you picked up that you would like to highlight?
I'll highlight just a few. Many speakers felt that vaccination is a key economic recovery intervention for their respective countries. On climate change, I got the sense that there's a whole lot of money globally that is going to be poured into climate change. And this came in from remarks from various speakers, from Christine Lagarde of the ECB, the governor of the Central Bank of China, Angela Merkel, Macron from France, talking about enabling investment in climate change, and also about their targets with from a 40% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030 and by 2050 being carbon neutral.
And was yeah.
Sorry, on the other themes on regulation, with tech, Sundar Pichai, of the CEO of Google, welcomed government regulation around harmful content, and this was echoed by Mark Reed, the CEO of WPP, saying that Facebook actually wants government regulation to take the decision out of its hands. Also on data protection, fintech, and other regulation for big tech, many speakers from different parts of the globe called for a global framework and global consensus for regulation.
And was there a topic where different and maybe opposing views were expressed?
On following COVID, there's a lot of discussion, do supply chains actually go more local? And I felt there were divergent views. For instance, the CEO of Volkswagen, he said they're relying on open and global supply chains, so keeping, this global supply chain status quo, while Enrique Lores, the CEO of HP, said that they want to build factories closer to home and use 3D printing for that.
So Jesmane, is there any speaker that stood out for you from Davos 2021?
Yes, there was a conversation with the CEO of Google, and in terms of where they're taking Google and building a quantum cloud over the next 3 to 5 years with the quantum infrastructure, which will give open access to developers using APIs, so that we could solve some of the world's pressing problems using quantum technologies was inspiring. On COVID, it only came across in Rajiv Shah, the president of the Rocker Foundation, comments that more countries need to do genome testing to pick up variants. And other speakers were silent on this point, merely pointing out that we need to be more careful with the South Africa and UK variants. And the only reason that South Africa and UK have picked up more variants is because they've been more diligent at genome testing. And I felt that in addition to Rajiv Shah, there needed to be more messaging around the importance of genome testing across the globe. Following my book on racial reconciliation, what came out for me from the racial justice panels is that companies can actually use their own brands to persuade people around diversity and inclusion. The chairperson of Bloomberg spoke about using the Bloomberg News platform to influence thinking on diversity and inclusion. And the head of sustainability from Unilever spoke of using the Unilever brands to encourage diversity, such as the Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And I felt that was an interesting angle that I hadn't heard of before.
Right. And tell us, Jesmane, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
One is this bright lady, Ray Itumeleng, and she's building her career in technology. She recently completed a postgraduate diploma in digital business, while her initial qualification was in finance, and she's just transitioned to a digital role at MTN. So I'm very excited about seeing her trajectory and building her career in technology.
And looking back over your leadership journey, Jesmane, who are the role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
I feel that it's a myth that leadership is lofty and only held by a few. You know, everyone is a leader, and it's up to us to inspire others in how we deal with difficult issues that I care about, like racism, inclusion, and uniting people to create and innovate in a COVID world. And we can all make these interventions, and a good book is Leadership on the Line, written by Harvard professor Ronald Heifetz, and he was one of my lecturers when I studied at Harvard, and I like his framework to leadership and looking at interventions where we make observations, we ask questions, we offer interpretations, we take actions, and we democratize leadership. It's held by your actions, not by your position.
Now, Jesmane, how can our listeners get hold of you, and where should they follow you? And most importantly, where can they buy your book?
Thanks. My website is myblooddividesandunites.com, where I regularly put on new press interviews and any reviews from my book. And then I'm on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Boggenpoel1, and on Instagram, Jesmane Boggenpoel. And for people wanting to get my book, it's available as an ebook on Kindle, on Amazon. And then in South Africa, you can order the book on Take-A-Lot, at Exclusive Books, on Loot, and internationally it can be ordered on paper as a paperback on Amazon as well.
And tell us, what inspired you to write this book?
I was inspired by three things. One, coming from a marginalized community, I wanted my story of where I reframe my story from one of shame and pain to one of overcoming and hope. And I wanted to inspire other people around the world who come from marginalized communities. And then being historically mixed race in South Africa, it's a unique story which hasn't been told on an international platform. And I wanted to tell that story to the international community. And that's why I wrote the book in American English, and I used American terminology so that the story would be easily understood by someone who's not South African. And then, very importantly, our world is so divided and fractured, and COVID has exposed those fractures, and I felt that we needed this message of inclusion and racial reconciliation at this time.
And I believe there might also be a training coming out around your book and helping companies to foster inclusion and diversity.
Yes, I am currently working on training that is based on the book, and anyone can reach out to me about that.
Great, great. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about that on LinkedIn. Yes. Now, Jesmane, last but not least, is there one piece of advice that you would like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own life?
You know, you've never arrived, so continue to learn, continue to grow.
Well, Jesmane, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and bringing us back the insights from the first virtual Davos, and also sharing your own leadership journey. And I'm very much looking forward to reading your book, and hopefully you will inspire many, many more people and companies to enter this journey of diversity and inclusion.
Thank you very much.